Hello and welcome to the Sewing Studio. Today I'm going to show you how to make this quilt behind me, which is called a square deal. Now, we've very kindly been loaned this quilt by Pam and Nicky Lintott, and we're going to be using their book, Quilts from Quarters. And I've really enjoyed doing the pieces to prepare for this video. And I've decided now that I'm not going to make just one of these, I'm going to make two. I've really loved doing this. The longest part was the cutting. So you have your 12 fat quarters, and I'm just going to refer to the notes in here to tell you what we need to cut. So from your fat quarters, we are going to choose 4 that we like the best, and I've already done that. And so with these 4, we cut these into 7.5-inch squares. So I've used the really bold ones for my 7.5-inch squares, because you can see that they are the ones that you're going to see the most of when you look at the quilt behind me. So the big squares. And then from your other 8 fat quarters, you are going to cut those down into 4.5-inch squares. So the book does give you all the quantities that you need to make. So what we're then going to do is we are going to put a border around our big square. Now, the fabric that has gone round them is a Macawa fabric, because I wanted something really bright and with purples and pinks like the quilt. And so all of the main fabrics are Kaffe Facet fabrics, and the fabric in between is a Macawa fabric. So you've got your strips, which you've cut into 1.5 inches, and then they've been subcut into 1.5 by 4.5, 1.5 by 7.5, and 1.5 by 9.5. And then we've also got our end pieces, which are the triangles and diamonds, because as you can see, this quilt has been put together on point, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later on. So first of all, I'm just going to frame this piece, and I'm going to put 2 7.5s, and I'm going to join those, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to join the 9.5. So that's what we're going to do first. So I'm putting my 1.5 by 7.5-inch strips on either side of the block. So I'm just going to press these back, and then I'm going to join the other strips. So I'm going to set my seam and just flip it back. And then I'm going to take 2 of the 9.5-inch strips, and I'm going to join those onto there to frame the block. I have to say I'm loving it because it's purple. And you can see here I've obviously been a little generous with my cutting, but that's not the end of the world. I'm just going to trim that up. So that's one of our blocks done. So the next block we're going to do, we're going to take 4 of the smaller blocks, which are 4.5 inches square. So I'm just going to choose 4 of these. And what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to take the 1.5 by 4.5. Join that to those. And then I'm going to take the 1.5 by 9.5 so that our block looks like that. So I'm just going off to the machine to get that block completed. Now I'm just going to press those before I put the next piece across the middle. With these, I'm going to set the seams. And then I'm going to press the middle piece going out towards the sides. I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to press it like that. So I find that you get it a bit flatter like that. And now we're going to join these 2 pieces together using our 9.5 by 1.5. Normally I'd go back to the iron to press that, but I'm just going to finger press it for now. And then we're going to join this piece. Now, people sometimes say, how do you get this lined up so that you don't start off and end up with your block not being lined up? So what I tend to do is I line my block up and then I fold it back to the seam and just finger press it. And then I come to the seam like this and I make sure that that's completely lined up. Hopefully you can see that on this camera, that that is lined up with the seam underneath. And then I'll just take it from the seam and flip it back. It's easy to do it if you do it with the with an ironed piece. Let's just double check that. So yeah, so on that crease. And then I tend to just pop a pin in to hold it, because what we don't want is we don't want it to be out of line, and this will give us a nice even cross, hopefully. So I'm just going back to the iron now to give that a good press. I do have people ask why I set my seams before I press them. And the reason for that is, if you set your seams, you're much more likely not to stretch your fabric and have a more even finish. I'm just going to press that open again. And again, you can see I was obviously a little generous with my cutting, so I'm just going to trim that up. I'm not going to get too worried about that. That's why we've got nice rulers for squaring blocks up. So these are our 2 blocks completed. And what you would do is you would follow the pattern and you would make all of your blocks with your 4s and your framed blocks. And then to put it together, we put it together on point. And we're going to show you this nice photograph here. So you can see, let me turn the page over, because the lovely thing about this book is they show you exactly how to put it together. So we're going to give you a close-up of that. And what I'm going to do is show you how I've started the rows. Because it's on point, you start it with one of the pieces. Let me just show you what I mean. So you're doing it in rows. So it looks as if you're dealing with squares, not diamonds. So you put your first row together like this, which is your block of 4 and then 2 triangles. And as I say, in the book, it gives you the measurements for these triangles. So they started as squares and then we cut across them. And then your next row you're going to add is this row. So you've got your lovely big piece in the middle, and then you've got your 2 smaller blocks with the smaller squares, and then you've got these quarters again that you're going to put on the end. And the book does give you all the measurements, and you continue to lay it out in that way, and then you actually turn it round. So that's how you've put it together on point. So I'm just going to go over to the quilt behind me and I'm going to explain that in more detail. So you can see how this has been put together. So if you remember, I showed you, so we had a triangle, our small squares joined together, and another triangle, and then the next row we've got a triangle, our small squares, our big squares, the small squares, and a triangle. So I showed you that earlier on, and they've been joined together. So you actually join your quilt making your rows. So every row you've got a triangle at the end, which are these pieces. So this bottom row here mirrors our top one. So if you follow the pattern in the book, it's really easy because you're just sewing it in rows, and then to finish it off, you're just putting a corner triangle on each of the 4 corners here. So what I love about this is this flash of orange that it's been finished off with. When I was looking at mine, I was thinking, oh, the binding I'm going to use is the same as the background. But looking at this, I'm thinking, no, I need something that's going to really make it pop. And that's what this orange does. It really makes it pop. It's absolutely beautiful. And all of those colours together. And then the back of the quilt is this lovely orange again. And it's been long arm quilted. And I just love that design. I think it's absolutely beautiful. We've got it in 2 colourways. So we've got this, and we've also got a blue, and I just love it. So it's inspired me. I'm going to make 2 brightly coloured ones. So it's a brilliant book, and I'd just like to say thank you to Pam and Nicky for lending us these quilts and allowing us to share these patterns with you. Hope you've been inspired too. As always, have fun, and I look forward to seeing you next time here in the sewing studio.